everyone. Thanks for joining me. It's Tuesday and it's the Plant-Based Business Hour with Elysabeth Alfano. It's great to be back with you. So much to discuss. The world is upside down these days, and perhaps that's a good thing. When I originally started the Plant-Based Business Hour, I wanted to do it because I wanted to make sure that people were making that connection that a meat-borne pandemic was coming from meat. And if we wanted a safe and secure future, we would need a safe and secure food supply. And that, of course, is plant-based foods. Since then, since I'll say early coronavirus times, the world continues to turn on itself and realize that we need change. And it's not just that we need more impact investing in vegan businesses. We need to support the diversity, the female-owned, the people of color-owned businesses. And we're going to get into that today with my guest. I'm so happy to have Alicia Robb with me, the CEO of Next Wave Impact. Alicia, thanks for being with me.
Thanks for having me.
So much to talk about. So as I say, the world is upside down, and I think that perhaps that's a good thing. So tell me about Next Wave Impact and the changes that you are trying to make through your very specific impact investing focus.
Sure. Next Wave Impact is an early stage venture fund. We have 99 women in our current fund, 25 of them women of color. And our goal really at Next Wave Impact is to create a more diversified ecosystem in entrepreneurship by bringing more women and people of color onto the investing side of the ecosystem. And we primarily invest in women and people of color as far as entrepreneurs go as well.
Okay, so we were talking about this before the show. Statistics are, kind of nebulous out there, but generally, I think we all agree that you don't see the majority of businesses being run by women. You certainly don't see the majority of businesses being run by people of color, and you see much fewer female investors into these businesses. If you had to do sort of a live bet during a poker game, what the percentages would break out to, what would they be for you in terms of percentage of numbers of investors who are women and percentages of business who are women, give or take?
Sure. Well, there's a difference between like Main Street businesses and high growth venture-backed businesses. So the current stats for venture capital going to women-led companies, it's 2.8% of VC capital goes to women CEOs, and less than 1% goes to Latinos, and less than 1% goes to African-American businesses. Now, Main Street businesses, about 20 to 30% are women-led companies, and obviously a smaller share are led by people of color. But in terms of the high growth, there you really do see a much greater gender and racial disparity. And a lot of that is because the funders are not investing in women and people of color.
And why?
Well, there's a lot of reasons, but one of them is this thing called homophily. You like to hang out with people that are like you. You like to start companies with people that are like you, and you like to invest in people that are like you. And so one reason why we see very little venture capital going to women-led companies or companies led by people of color is that most of the investors are white men, and they typically invest in white men. I think that's changing somewhat as we get more diversity on the investor side of the equation, but we still see, a really huge gap in terms of the capital going to these companies. And I think as we have more data points of this is not just the right thing to do, it's the business thing to do, and there's great returns to be had by investing in underrepresented entrepreneurs, we're going to see more, white men getting on board, but because it is an economic opportunity. So I want to talk about that because I think that's very interesting, the economic opportunity. But I'll just throw in there that, well, I do understand people do what they know, and they're most comfortable doing what they know, not reinventing their own wheel. So I understand that people might naturally find their comfort groove with people who look exactly like themselves. But as I find, and as beginning my investment journey, I'm often inspired by people who are much different than me because they see an opportunity that I could never see wearing the glasses that I wear in this world from my perspective as a female, certain age, certain color. I live in a city, not a rural place, etc. So I'm always looking for the opportunity that I might have overmissed. And that usually comes from a diverse perspective. So I'm just curious if you're finding that people are inspired at all by
others, or they really just, they stick to what they know?
Well, I think so. I mean, unfortunately, there's research that shows, I think it's 67% of investors won't invest in an opportunity they don't personally see a need for. So yes, if you only have white men of a certain age investing, they're going to not see a lot of
Right.
needs that could be really profitable. So I think those people with a more uh, a broader mindset, and those are looking for opportunity and are looking for diversity, they are seeing the opportunities that are coming through the pipeline by entrepreneurs that are, underrepresented.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's money to be made. So, if you can get over your discomfort, there are so opportunities to be had. So let's talk a little bit about that. What kind of, you had mentioned earlier that there's, good economic opportunity if you're willing to open your mind a little bit. So give me a sense for that.
Sure. I think, there's research that shows actually women and people of color are great investment opportunities, and that returns are higher, and women and people of color outperform. So I think that there's, a lot more research that needs to be seen or shown. I think a lot of what we see is anecdotal, but in terms of the outperformance, I think we're seeing more and more companies that are doing really well. I mean, look at, for example, Spanx. That was completely self-funded, bootstrapped by Sarah Blakely, and
Yes.
it's worth more than $1 billion. She never took outside capital. So, I think there's a lot of opportunities here.
Yeah. I'm only looking at my phone because I'm trying to share this on Facebook so that we can get as many people to hear this, because I want to support the female vegan businesses out there. We're going to get into that in a little bit about focusing even more in one's portfolio and going towards vegan businesses, but also the vegan investors. I think women might be holding back from investing. So if we go from, it's majority of companies are run by and invested in by white men, and then maybe you have women, and then maybe you have people of color, and then sort of the lowest rung, I would think, is the people of diversity and women who are actually investing, either angel investing or venture capital investing in these businesses. And I think it's a learning curve, and I'm wondering if you're experiencing that through Next Wave Impact.
Oh, no, that's exactly why we started Next Wave Impact. So I actually did a pilot fund when I was at the Kauffman Foundation. So I was in research and policy for 12 years at the Kauffman Foundation, and my research focused on entrepreneurship by women and minorities. And one of the things I looked at was this gender gap and racial gap in the amount of capital going to women and people of color. And then I was looking at the fact that there's so few women and people of color on the investing side, and those gaps are even larger on that side. And so then that became one of my research topics. Why do we see so few women actually becoming investors? And there was a lot of reasons that came out of it. They didn't know about angel investing or see this asset class. They didn't know other angel investors. They didn't see deal flow. They didn't know how, and they wanted to know how before they did it. And they were risk averse to making that first large investment into a company that's kind of high risk because they're early stage. And so I designed a learning by doing fund that brought women together into a fund that were mentored by experienced angels, that had education and training, and then they got a portfolio of investments with their one investment. And I pitched that to Kauffman Foundation. They said, "Oh, that's a great idea, but it'll take us like 5 years to get through the lawyers. So just go do it, and we'll fund the education and training piece." And so I did. I launched a pilot program here in the US as well as in Europe. So we had nearly 200 women doing these two pilot funds. And from there, I learned that this really was a great way to onboard women into early stage investing by mitigating some of the risk by the asset class, by getting a portfolio of companies with that one investment, and then getting mentored by experienced angels, having education and training, and being part of a community that learns and does it together. And that's what Next Wave Impact really is. So this is our second, I'm on the second fund, Next Wave Impact. That's the first impact fund that's focused on impact companies. But Europe is on their fourth fund, and there's other funds that have popped up from this. So it's a great way to onboard early stage investors as they're just getting started.
And can anyone join Next Wave Impact to go through your education program?
So we were limited by the SEC to have 99 investors in the fund. It's since been expanded to 249, but then you're limited to a $10 million fund. But as long as you're an accredited investor, and it's self-accredited, you have to have income or wealth meet income or wealth thresholds. But we put all the education and training stuff online on nextwaveimpact.com. There's an investor education page. So we have all these trainings that are 5 minutes, 20 minutes, 60-minute webinars on early stage investing, term sheets, dilution, due diligence, follow-on rounds, you name it. It's all there, and it's all for free, and people can do that at their own pace. We were oversubscribed with our fund. We had lots of people on the waiting list to get in. We're planning on another fund sometime in the winter. But right now we have a syndicate and an angel group called Vegan Investors, and it's veganinvestors.com that specifically focus on vegan investing. And then Next Wave Impact, we have a loose syndicate where we invest individually as angels into something called special purpose vehicles that we organize for each investment that we're going to make. So we recently had a Founders of Color showcase last month where we had 10 companies present, and we are putting together special purpose vehicles to invest in at least 5 of those. So each person is coming in individually to invest in those companies. And then we invest and aggregate those smaller investments into a large investment into each of those companies.
Okay, so if not everybody is following, then I really want to send you to nextwaveimpact.com, and you'll see at the top of her website, there is an education tab. Hit on that, and everything that she's talking about here does exist, as she was saying, in 5-minute increments or 20-minute increments or sometimes an hour, but it's all free. It's all educational, and it's all to help you get through if these terms are new to you, or if you are a female investor or entrepreneur as well, because it's really, I think, helpful to know what the investors are looking for, what they're learning, what they're wanting to see from you. So for either of these categories, and people of color, of course, go there, and it's a great learning tool that is free, and it helps you get through the hurdle if you're starting to think, I'd like to make some money on this. So let's talk about this. Of course, we all know Beyond Meat IPO 2019 is the most successful IPO since 2008. But there are not many vegan businesses going to IPO. So if that's the situation, then how do you partake in this vegan economy? So I love that you're talking about veganinvestors.com, which I, as I understand it, does take place as one of your projects under Next Wave Impact. Talk to us about some of the opportunities that you're finding in the vegan world, I'll say year over year. So what has this last 12 months been like compared to the previous 12 months? I think the world is on fire, but tell me.
No, it really is. I mean, you think about 5 years ago when you were hard pressed to find any great vegan cheese options. And now there's just this proliferation of amazing vegan cheeses, from brie to pizza, mozzarella to you name it. So I think we're in a great place, and kudos to those that have been vegan for 30 plus years. I'm going on 15, but it's certainly a different world. And I think we're also starting to see both the increase in the number of products that are being that are coming on into the market, but also the quality and just the distribution. So you could be in rural, name a state, and you're having more and more opportunities to find things. So I think as the distribution grows, more people are going to come on board to eating vegan food because it is so much better.
Yes, most definitely. Okay, so now we're talking about all these small groups of people, if you will. We've got the female investors that might include people of color, but then you also have the people of color themselves, and then you have the vegan investors. I'm wondering, in your sphere, which is people of color and women, is there any resistance to vegan investing?
Any resistance? No, I mean, our vegan investor group doesn't focus on women per se. I mean, we have men and women and people of color in our vegan investor group. So, for example, we meet monthly, and we actually just started. We are only on probably our 6th or 7th meeting, and we've just started looking at companies. And again, it's not restricted to entrepreneurs that are women or people of color. but for example, tomorrow is our monthly presentation, and we've got one woman and one man. Well, the man they're co-founded by a couple, but so we've got two companies that present each month, and then we present virtually since we have investors all over the country and actually all over the world. So the gender race piece doesn't really necessarily come into the vegan investing thing, but there's a lot of vegan investors and that are friends of mine that are women that we really want to see more women and people of color getting funded because that's something we're very passionate about.
And this is the big opportunity. So you want these people to get funded, but you also want them to partake in the general economy. And that's how you lift people up, is that more people of color and who, were disadvantaged and didn't get the access, women, et cetera, who didn't get the access before. Now they're getting the money, and money gets you access. So you want to see that these people are funded and partaking in the profits of the general economy. And I believe that vegan is going to be nailing some very big profits. I wondered if you could speak to us about that.
Oh, I definitely think so. As we think about a more just and sustainable planet, I don't think we can really think about investing in anything that doesn't have an impact. I mean, everything has an impact, whether it's positive or negative. But when we think about the future of our planet and the future of a society that we want to live in, don't we want to live in a sustainable, just society? And I think we do. And so the vegan movement is around a more just and sustainable planet. So I think it's definitely the future. And there's, it'll be profitable, but it will also be right and a good thing. So
yes, it will be right and a good thing. And I do think it will be profitable. And so with this in mind, are you seeing new players come into the space who are all about the money, let's say, and not really about the mission? Are you seeing that kind of investor show up, or is everybody pretty mission driven?
Oh no, I think you have all kinds, and I think that's really important for entrepreneurs to really look at who's investing in them, because that relationship is really important, and it's something that's long term. It's kind of like a marriage, and so you really do want to make sure that you're aligned, and that's why really impact investing is important to me, because I really want to make sure that entrepreneurs and investors know that impact is front and center for everything I'm doing. And I'm very aligned in making sure the entrepreneurs are successful for themselves, not just for me or the planet or whatever. I think all the stakeholders need to benefit. And I think the current venture capital model is definitely broken, and we try to really think about more innovative and sustainable models that create wealth for the entrepreneurs as well as the communities.
When you say that it's broken, what do you mean? Because it was exclusive to one group before, or why do you say that it's broken?
Well, I mean, the venture capital model in general is basically like you're going to make 10 investments and expect 8 to fail, 1 to return your capital and maybe a little return, and then 1 to be a home run. But if you think about those 8 failures and the devastation it causes, not only just to the investors, but for the entrepreneurs, for the employees, for the communities, those 8 failures, I just don't think that kind of disruption or destruction needs to happen. I think we need to think more sustainably about investing in the sustainable growth of all of these companies. I mean, sure, we're going to have some failures, but that model of expecting most of them to fail is just not acceptable to me. So I think we really need to think of more sustainable models that create businesses that can survive and thrive. Maybe not be that 100x that hockey stick return that everybody's shooting for with these unicorns, but let's think about the zebra movement of the zebras that actually exist, and there's a lot of them, and let's help them grow.
It's the garanimals of investing. Okay. Help me then understand what your criteria is for investing. So you don't want to see the numbers of 8 fail and maybe 1 is plateaued and 1 really takes off. You want to see as many go forward as possible. So what kind of things are you looking for before you invest?
Sure. So from the vegan investor standpoint, because this is each individual investing. So as a So there's two things, right? So as a venture capitalist, I manage other people's money, and I have a fiduciary responsibility to ensure that I maximize their return in a sustainable way. And so I don't necessarily take extra risks on early stage companies because of that investment thesis and my responsibility. But for vegan investors, since we're all investing our own money, we're typically looking at very early stage companies taking in their first outside money. But in any case, I think what we're looking for is something that's, a product that's differentiated, that's, what's unique about them, their passion, what's their motivation for starting this company? Because as an entrepreneur, it's not an easy road. And if you're not really passionate about it, you're not gonna make it, because it's just, it's tough. And so you really want to make sure that they're passionate and have a reason why behind what they're doing. So the product has to be something that's there's a market for. So product market fit is important, and it's a big enough market. And I think what we've shown, or not what we've shown, but what the market has shown, is that vegan companies, there's definitely a big market for this. And so that question has kind of been answered, and people accept this now thanks to the IPO by Beyond Meat and some other, really large companies that have scaled successfully. People see that this is a large market and growing market. So product market fit, passion, quality product that's that's unique. Looking for something, entrepreneurs that want to scale. I mean, a lot of companies come to us that are really kind of main street businesses that want to grow, but not really, be global or even nationwide. And, those are not typically the kind of angel investments people make. I mean, I am an investor and a part owner of a restaurant, but that's a different kind of investment.
I would say, as I start my early stages of this, that the team is incredibly important to me. And so as I look at the products, in a way, I sort of feel like it's an open slate, because we're going to take out that meat product, we're going to take out that dairy product. So it's like bowling. I can foresee taking out meat and dairy with my vegan bowling ball. So that's how I approach it from a product standpoint. I think there's so much to take out that it's just like fun. But I am concerned with the team. I'm concerned with not just the passion. Usually that's there with vegans, but I'm concerned with the vision, I like to say, it's a phrase I love, nose to the grindstone, eyes to the sky. You have to be so incredibly hopeful and yet so realistic about your numbers. So I'm looking for this very fine personality type. And although it's not one personality that I want to see over and over again, that's not what I'm saying, but I am looking for someone who can balance these extreme traits of so dedicated and knowledgeable about the numbers and willing to get into the nitty-gritty, and who can see the forest for the trees and really go large scale. So somebody who can get into the details and go big, and then be very comfortable going back and forth between the two. So it's a particular person that I'm willing to follow with dollars. And of course, as a potential investor, you want to help where you can. So, you end up not just giving your dollars, at least I speak for myself, but it's your time and your devotion and energy. So it's a particular person that I'm willing to follow, I think.
Yes. And a lot of times it can't just be one person to do all of that. And so that's why typically, teams of people are really important. So when I talk about the founder passion and really the big picture and vision, I think that's super important. And having that person really understand what their strengths and weaknesses are, and building a team that really complements what their skill set and fills in where they have gaps.
Yes, that realism about that they can't do it all. They don't have all the answers. You like to see good R&D people in there. Yeah, absolutely. What are some of the common investing mistakes? Again, I don't want to forego this opportunity. Nextwaveimpact.com at the top right, Alicia has an educational tab. Please click on that. It's free information for everybody about, what's a due diligence call, what's angel investing, what's venture capital investing, some of these things, so that you don't feel tripped up in the beginning. And the more money we can bring into the vegan space, the better. And the more we all partake in the vegan economy. So if this is at all of interest to you, definitely go to nextwaveimpact.com and hit the education tab. So what are some of the common investing mistakes that you see?
Well, it's so funny you asked that, because one of the things I did with the last book I wrote called Next Wave was interview a ton of venture capitalists and angel investors and sit and ask them, what advice would you give to new and emerging early stage investors? And the things that they said, like, for example, look at 20 deals before you ever make your first investments. Look at an opportunity from the investor point of view, not the consumer, like, oh my God, I love this product, I want to see it in the market, but really, what is the investment opportunity, and what are the strengths and weaknesses of it from the investment lens, and things like that. And I thought, oh my God, wouldn't it be great to help prevent all these initial rookie mistakes that people make as they get into this. And then what do? They make these mistakes, they lose money, and then they don't stay in the game because they've lost money. And that's kind of how Next Wave started, was doing that pilot fund when I was still at the Kauffman Foundation, and really helping people not make those first mistakes like that, and making having a year of learning and training and building that portfolio. Because one of the things you learn is, in this asset class, you have to make multiple investments to mitigate the risk of this asset class. And so building a portfolio, and that takes time and it takes discipline. And one easy way to do it is just to invest in a fund. But for those of folks that want to be involved in helping these entrepreneurs scale, then they want to be actively engaged in many of the investments that they make.
Yes, and then there are costs associated with the fund, and then you're sort of disconnected from the actual entrepreneur, which
unless it's a learning by doing fund like ours, we're very engaged.
Unless it's like your fund, of course. I stand corrected. In fact, I think you said you had closed that first fund, but you now have a second fund. Did I get that right?
So the pilot fund was while I was still at the Kauffman Foundation, and then I launched Next Wave Impact's first impact fund, and we've just finished making our first stage investments, and then we're saving the rest for follow-on. So we're going to be doing another fund probably this winter. But in the meantime, we're just acting like an angel group and doing individual investments and then syndicating it across our group.
And this next fund, is it also a sort of learn as you do fund?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is. Ooh, good to know, everybody. So you'll want to contact Alicia straight away, I'm sure. Okay, so we talked about some of the common pitfalls of investing mistakes for new investors. What are some of the pitfalls you see for the entrepreneurs that come with their deck? Either pitfalls as a new entrepreneur or just in their pitching, or both?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a lot. I think the best thing you can do as an entrepreneur is really do your homework. I mean, all early stage investors have investment theses. And so finding the right investors that invest in your sector or your stage or your geography, or if you're underrepresented as women or founders of color, like finding the investors where you fit their investment thesis. And so doing your homework. We get a lot of cold calls and so forth. And once in a while, and I've definitely made investments that way by people cold calling me, but in general, it's coming through your network. And so really participating in the entrepreneurial ecosystem, getting involved with the accelerators, with startup events. There's so much going on in every city, regardless of if you're not in Silicon Valley or, Boston. I mean, I'm in Boulder, Colorado, and we specifically focus on companies outside of Silicon Valley and Boston and the rest of the country. But as we're seeing more and more ecosystems really strengthen across the country, there's a lot of opportunities to get involved locally and then build those relationships with investors before you actually need the money. And there's tons of resources out there on how to build a deck and what you need to include and so forth. But I think really just building those relationships with investors ahead of time is key.
I think that is so important that people just, there's this natural tendency to want to focus product only, but it really is about those relationships, and those relationships can take you very far. The good investors for you are going to have lots of connections and really help you build that business in ways you maybe don't even realize in year one. So I think that tip for having relationship with your investors is really a good one.
And especially if you're a vegan entrepreneur, I mean, there's specific, food accelerators that really are focused on helping
more and more
CPG companies scale their companies. There's investor groups like Vegan Investors and Glasswall Syndicate. There's Good Food Institute that's doing all this R&D around plant-based alternatives and cultured products. And so it's a very large and growing ecosystem. So really get involved in all of these.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I love that you say that. And it's growing by the day. I mean, it's so exciting to be in it because literally you can see it grow before your eyes. I don't know what other area has this going on for it right now. Maybe solar energy, but even that, I'm not sure. What would you like to see on the market that isn't yet there? In terms of a product, I mean, because you get to see a lot of products, they come to you before they ever get to market. What isn't coming through your office that you'd like to see?
Well, that's a good question. There's so many great and diversified products out there that are getting animals out of the supply chain in the food industry. I think materials, I think the leather, silk, and other kinds of clothing, textiles is I think important. I think one of the other big things that we really need to think about as a community is sustainable packaging. I see so many companies that have really good food products, but the packaging is just not sustainable. And so really thinking about how we can marry sustainable packaging with our ethical products, that's going to be key, because I've just said no to things because I can't handle their packaging. Just Egg, if you're watching this, I will not buy your product in that little single-use plastic container. I won't do it. Thank you for making the folded egg in the freezer section, but
I like Just Egg. I eat it all the time. I see what you're saying about packaging. And I know what you're saying, because really to have that vision going forward, you do want your packaging to mirror your values. And it's tricky business, but business is tricky business. So that's a great point. Okay. Now I know you're going to say a plant-based world, but if you could make your predictions beyond that, where do you think we're going, let's say in the next 5 years? What's your prediction?
Wow. I think it's going to have to be the whole package. I think it's going to have to be plant-based and sustainable packaging. And I think, the more sustainable and local and ethical you can get, it's going to be key. So looking at your supply chain, making sure that it's sustainable and ethical, making sure that your governance and your board is diverse. And I just think it's going to be the whole package. It's not just going to be one that a vegan is going to be enough anymore. It's not.
It's interesting. And that really is the focus of Next Wave Impact, because you have your own vegan investors group, which falls under Next Wave Impact, and you're looking to include people of color, but you're looking at the whole package. So making money, but also who are you making money with, and what kind of product are you making money with? So that's
and I think, related to that, there's this big, I don't know what you call it, not controversy, but, there is this tension in the market of how do we feel about Tyson and all these other companies getting on board and investing and buying, through acquisition, a lot of these vegan companies. And, I'm conflicted as well, because I do see the distribution that they offer, but I want to see the wealth created in this community going to the entrepreneurs and not going to these multinationals that are taking advantage of a growing opportunity. So I'm really looking for companies, when I ask what their exit plan is not those that say, oh, I want to be acquired by Tyson.
It is tricky business, and I am conflicted myself as well, because I see the need for the distribution channels, as you say. I also must say that I'm almost equally as interested in the deep pockets for advertising, because I want to see that ad campaign, which is going to come, because as soon as they start making money from plant-based business, they're going to shift their ad campaigns, and it's going to be, oh, look how manly it is to eat plants. That's the ad campaign I want to see. And I want to see it on every football game. I want to see it at every sports arena. So if you share that with me, then you know who's got the dollars to do that. And yet they put us in this mess. So I feel, but what's the win? Is the win to look in the past, or is the win to say in the future, we shift the product lines from meat and dairy to plant-based?
Well,
I
and
struggle.
I think it's also shifting the economy to something that's not so.
That's right.
I don't want to say not so capitalistic, but I think, looking at worker cooperatives and looking at, there's a great book called Capitalism Reimagined that I'm reading right now. And it really, talks about how do we look at capitalism where all stakeholders, including the planet, are, taken into account. And I really think not just the venture capital model, but the whole capitalistic model needs to be, really redesigned and create something that works for everyone.
Alicia Robb is changing the world. Just in case you didn't get that, I want to reiterate it here. Thank you for that note. I love that we're just, everything is broken right now. We're in a period of brokenness. So why don't we change the investment cycle as well? Why should we leave that out? It's a period where we have the opportunity to change how things work as we know it. And this is a good area to do it as well. So you are vegan, are you not?
I am.
Yes, of course you are. Could you tell us, when was the moment that you knew? Is there a moment in time that you remember when you said, I will not do it anymore?
I've actually been vegetarian since 1988. My college roommate, I had been contemplating it because I was an animal lover my whole life. And, just one day she said, just do it, start today. And I just did. And I have never had meat since. And I think, like many vegetarians back in the day, they didn't realize if you were doing it for animal rights, the cruelty that was inherent in the egg and dairy industries. And so it wasn't really until I moved to San Francisco and I went to one of those, I don't know if it was a PETA or who it was, but I remember it was Bruce Friedrich had done this, vegan 101 class. And I learned about the cruelty in the dairy and egg industries, and really started then saying, wow, if I'm going to be consistent in my values, I need to not have animal products in my diet. And so it took a few years, but I watched a documentary a couple of years later, and that was kind of like the tipping point of doing it. So I think it's, I can't remember, it's about 15 years now since I've been vegan. But yeah, that was,
I will almost
knowledge.
Say that, knowledge is so great, and documentary films are so helpful for that. And statistically are often the thing that push people over the edge is a good documentary film. Of course, there are so many. Cowspiracy, Sean Munson, great director. So obviously there's many, even the more lighthearted ones like Okja. I mean, I think they do push the needle for people, Forks Over Knives, etc.
Or Game Changers.
Game
Changers. So many out there nowadays.
Yes.
What the hell?
Yes, absolutely right. But I will say that for people who don't realize, who are vegetarian, maybe think that that's enough, I will say that dairy is the cruelest industry in my perspective, much crueler than the meat industry, because those mother cows have their babies taken away again and again and again, and they have to live through it. And it's awful and unmistakable. If you were around the cries of those animals, unmistakable, perpetual, inflicted grief. It's awful. And as sentient beings, all of us who have children, it would be impossible not to recognize it. So I always think like, oh, don't give dairy a pass, folks, because
oh, I know. It's like I look at my feminist friends and I'm like, how can you be feminist and not understand the exploitation of female animals in the supply chain? It's just torture.
That's what I was trying to get at earlier in our conversation when I said, okay, you have a bunch of female investors potentially at Next Wave Impact. Not all of them are vegan investors. Are they understanding the connection there?
I could probably be more vocal than I am, and I'm sure a lot of people think I'm already too vocal as I am, but I do try to, when I have events for our investors, when I'm hosting, when I'm putting them on, they're always vegan, and I try to explain why. But yeah, it's a tough, it's tough to get people to change.
Well, I'll say this from Tom Vincel: things are not broken, they're transitioning. Nice, hopeful note there from him. Thank you, Tom. I don't think you speak up too much, Alicia. I like it. So keep it coming.
Yeah, but you're vegan. I'm preaching to the choir with you guys, but it's the other ones that I have to worry about.
What do you wish you knew 10 years ago that you know now?
10 years ago. I wish I knew how fast one administration could change things and move things backward. And I think I would have worked a lot harder to prevent that from happening.
I love that you say that, because I always say something similar, but I say it in the positive, but the negative is so true as well. I always say one person really can change the world. It's amazing to watch the impact of one Ethan Brown, or, one person really can change the world. But of course, you can go up on the number line and you can go down on the number line. So one person can take you backwards as well. I also like to say, I wish I knew 10 years ago that I really need to advocate for myself. I can't be listening to this investor. I can't be listening to the NIH about this study. I can't be looking to the USDA to fix things for me, or my doctor, or, as I say, investment advice here and there. I really got to do the research myself. I really got to find the answers myself. And I really got to advocate for myself, because it's not so sure that your government's really going to be advocating for you. Speaking of which, we will see as the USDA nutritional guidelines come out for 2020 to 2025. That's going to be any day now. We'll see if dairy is on that chart. I digress a little bit, but since I'm here, I'll say 27% of the comments that went into the USDA were against dairy, because 65% of Americans are lactose intolerant, and that's higher in people of color, specifically African Americans and Asian Americans. So with the majority of the country lactose intolerant, most people don't consider it a health food. Most people don't want it. 27% left their comments as same. So we will see as the USDA comes out for its nutritional guidelines.
Yeah, it's kind of shocking now that even you've got all these ads like milk does the body good. And I just don't understand legally how they can actually say that, when we know that, people, this Western societies with our milk intake as have the worst. I'm not a nutritionist, but the calcium we don't absorb the calcium. It's not good for us. It does our body harm. And so how is it legal that they can do these ads that are so misleading?
They were sued. They no longer use that ad campaign.
Oh, well, good, I guess.
So there you go. But it does go back to what I was saying before, is you must advocate for yourself. How many people were duped by milk does a body good?
Oh, I still think, probably if you go out and poll people, half of the people would say that, oh yeah, milk does the body good.
That's right. And now we're back to what I was saying before. You really do want those deep pockets for advertising campaigns. They can be so impactful. I almost want the advertising dollars more than I want the distribution. Okay, my two last questions for you. Is there one phrase that you say to yourself all the time? Let's say you're having a bad day, or, maybe a day when the market's down a little bit, that you say to get yourself back in the game. I like to say nose to the grindstone, eyes to the sky.
Obviously living in Boulder is, kind of la la land, where, it's a different kind of reality almost. And so I'm not confronted by, in your face, the challenges and things that I might be in somewhere else. But I do get, down or frustrated when I think how far we need to go still. But I guess I just say, we have made so much progress. I mean, we have made so much progress that you've got to be hopeful, because minds and hearts are changing. So I guess when you look at the fact that there has been change, even though there is a long way to go, the fact that we have have created positive change, I think that gives me hope.
Mm-hmm. It's tricky. It's tricky because I share that with you. Some days I just think, oh my gosh, we still have so far to go. But it's one of the reasons that I do the Plant-Based Business Hour, because I think the thing that's going to get us over the hurdle, sadly, it's not vegans. It's not people out there holding signs, although it's so important. And I don't want those folks to ever stop. But I do think it's business. I do think that, we're going from 7 billion people on the planet to 10 billion people, but we're not getting more land and we're not getting more water. So, you do that simple math on the back of a napkin and you realize that the mathematical equation for meat and dairy just isn't there. And so people are doing in-depth math, not on the back of a napkin, and they're looking at their P&L and they're realizing they need to shift their product lines. And I think it's business that is going to shift us out of the necessity of living. If we want to have the resources on our planet so that we can stick around, we're going to have to use our resources differently. So I do
think, even though I'm more plant-based than the cultured meat, I think that cultured meat is going to be a game changer, and that is going to be the future of meat production. It's not going to be these factory farms with sentient beings being, suffering for months, years on end. It's going to be cultured. I just happen to like plant-based alternatives, and so I'm fine with those. But I think the vast majority, especially those that just think I need meat, they're going to get their meat, but it's not going to be from factory farms.
It's interesting that you say that. If we could go into that a little bit here. I also like plant-based alternatives. I'm very supportive. It's a different investment strategy, and I'm not sure I'm big enough to really get in it. It requires a lot of money and a long time frame perspective from the investing standpoint. But I really think that cellular agriculture is the game changer. And I'm wondering if you think those two will coexist or if cellular will knock out plant-based.
Oh, no, I think they're complementary. I definitely think they're both in our future. It's just, a different market demand.
Mm-hmm. One thing that I think is interesting that I think we're going to see is a blend of the two. So you might have cellular fat introduced into a plant-based burger. So the cellular, it's not animal. I mean, it comes from animal cells, but I think those two could come together and be something interesting. So
definitely.
We will see. We will see. So this leads us to my last question. It's a great segue. What is your favorite snack?
My favorite snack? Wow. Like healthy snack would probably be edamame.
It can be anything.
My favorite snack. Oh no.
Come
put me on the spot. I don't know.
Question.
I'm just going to stick with edamame and pretend I'm healthy. I
can't believe that.
Vegan, but anyway,
the question that trips you up is, what's your favorite snack? She can get into the numbers, but she can't quite remember her favorite snack. Okay. I do want to say, everybody, nextwaveimpact.com. Click in the right-hand corner at the top. You're going to see the educational tab, but also just get to know all of what she's about. Alicia Robb, I want to thank you for all that you do.
I don't think Vegan Investors is actually linked in from there. So veganinvestors.com is the vegan investor website.
Okay, wonderful. So we have our marching orders, nextwaveimpact.com and veganinvestors.com. Truly changing the world. I know so many people who want to be investing in the vegan space, but I don't know anyone other than you really focusing on getting people of color and women into that economic equation so that they are not left out of the profitability that we all should be enjoying as we shift our food supply. So thank you, Alicia. Everybody, you can follow up with her or me on all of the social media platforms. If you have any questions, you should always be here every Tuesday and Thursday at 1 p.m. Pacific time. It's a Plant-Based Business Hour. Of course, if you do miss it, you can always go find the podcast on iTunes and wherever you get your podcast. And if you have any questions for me, reach out to me personally. We are going to leave you now. Alicia, don't go away. But everybody else, thanks for all you do. Thanks for being vegan. Together, we're taking back our health and the health of the planet. Bye, everybody. See you Thursday. Stick around, Alicia.